Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is our latest episode of Weekends with Amit. This episode is titled Quantum Healing in the Times of Pandemic, and this is the first part of it. Quantum healing is a large subject, and though pandemic, we are more or less used to it by now in our own way, it is going to stay for a while. By all means, the all the indications point that it is there for some time, and we need to struggle in whatever way we can, and then eventually we must win. In doing that, quantum science can play a huge role to win against this. Someone said pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Here, what we can do is not only we can control the suffering, but we can reduce the pain as well by taking preventive measures. Now, what we are going to do here is the similar structure as we have always been doing. We have our two great panelists, Dr. Amit Goswami and Dr. Valentina Onisar. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. And as usual, I'll start with Dr. Goswami. And before we get into the quantum healing in times of pandemic, we'll stick to the first part, the quantum healing part. Quantum as a science have been doing a lot of things, and you have particularly contributed in many disciplines. You can really be said a multidisciplinarian in terms of the application of quantum science. Here, in this particular aspect, the quantum healing aspect, what would be your foundational thought? And we also must bear in mind that we did have a conversation on this subject a while back. So some of our listeners may already be aware of what we are talking about, but there is a good chance that there will be many more who have heard nothing about it. So just an introduction from you.
Okay. Quantum healing, the reason that we use the word quantum uh, is that quantum healing has a wonderful similarity with quantum leap. Deepak Chopra first noticed it, the great physician, author. Spontaneous healing without medical intervention has been known for a long time. But of course, what causes it? No medical intervention, so it could not be any drugs or any intervention from an expert. But what is it that is causing it? It did not go unnoticed that quantum healing generally takes place for healing from chronic disease. And Deepak recognized that maybe the malfunction that is causing the chronic disease is removed so fast that the healing could only be called quantum healing, because only in quantum physics do we know of spontaneous things to occur. As I said, quantum leap. When an electron jumps from one atomic orbit to another, it jumps instantly without taking any time, although there is supposed to be a distance between the orbits. But of course, it was too early for him, and he's a medical doctor anyway, probably did not feel very um, prepared to talk about too much quantum physics. So he made the analogy. He also noticed that consciousness must be taking a part. And then when I came into the picture, this was after I developed the quantum basics of quantum science already. I provided the idea that the creative process is the whole creative process, 4-stage, in fact, 5-stage preparation, unconscious processing, then what we call do, sudden insight, that's the quantum leap, and then manifestation. This 5-stage process is needed to produce quantum healing and real healing. That last stage, even after the quantum leap has taken place, is to change your lifestyle because it's a lifestyle that caused the organ malfunction that is being corrected. Now, what is a general understanding is that the organ malfunction would be an immune system malfunction. And this we now fully understand. And because we now fully understand the cause of the disease, chronic disease, therefore, we can correct it. We can do things to strengthen our organs in general, as well as especially the immune system. And this is the most important thing to talk about. Coronavirus is a virus. In all its variations, they're just mutations of the basic virus. So that part we cannot do anything much about. However, if our organs are strong, if they are functioning properly, especially the immune system, that's the key. It's the immune system defense which goes awry, which produces inflammation and all kinds of complications. If the immune system is healthy, then the healing is less of a challenge and people go through. Death does not take place. This is how the vaccines, which are not perfect, but vaccines work because they kind of protect the immune system and produces a great amount of protection from the rest of the complication caused by the disease as well. So this is what we are going to talk about. The big news, the great news for everyone is that we now have both a theory and the empirical data, clinical data, that allopathic scientists develop their drug therapy on. Drug therapy is great, the clinical data is great, but as Einstein pointed out to Heisenberg, two great physicists talking to each other, Heisenberg was claiming that maybe we can eliminate theory altogether because, if science is evidence-based, then who can complain? And Einstein said, what will happen? People will use primitive theories to design the experiment. It's not easy. Without a solid theory, you cannot design the experiment, what to test properly. And they do know this. For example, in this case, are we testing anything to prevent anybody's disease? No. The medicine we have right now, allopathic medicine, is not preventive. So people get their disease complications because their organs have become weak and they're not even aware of it because they are not necessarily symptoms yet. See the problem? You may have a weak lung, but you don't have asthma, you don't have allergy, you don't have the lung-related disease. You have a weak immune system, very defensive, but system is aggravated easily, but no evidence yet, no cancer, nothing. So how do you know? Our medicine system is not preventive, and this needs to change. But of course, we have a real physician who handles this challenge from real patients here to talk about it. So, take away, Krishanu.
That was a very good talk in terms of the foundation and the context in which we are talking. And of course, now let us go to Dr. Anisar. And my question there is on the second part. So he talked about the quantum healing part, and as he pointed out that you are a medical doctor, you treat patients, live human beings, and you are the practical aspect of it. So, how do you see this pandemic, the second part of our subject today?
Right. I'm glad that it's going to be a series on this subject and that is affecting all of us today. And the idea is that we are living in a time of crisis, obviously, no matter the number of cases that we are told. And you know that they are circulating, especially in mass media, all kind of contradictory opinion, which are many times expressions of fear, of panic, which reached all over the world. And you may get to the certitude that we are kind of living a tough experience as humanity, which can be equated like a psychosis of a world war, actually. So we go on many levels when we talk about healing of what's happening right now. Of course, there are two hypotheses of the origin of the virus, natural or man-made. There are not enough arguments to see what is what, but important is what to do right now, you know, ourselves individually and of course together. Because indeed the virus is a biological entity which has its own intelligence, which appears to be in competition with the human one. Yeah? And of course, well, like Amit was talking, um, the point to do is to increase the immunity. And I'm very surprised to notice that there's not really enough talk in the world about preventive medicine. You know, all these methods which really work, but instead, on the other hand, you see so much increase on the fear, on the anxiety, which of course it's affecting our health and eventually makes us sick, right? And if you think of the fear which exists now, like decreasing your vibration, which is so dangerous. So of course, the coronavirus, all this, what's happening now, it's a very strong reminder that we must shift our attitude towards health and well-being. Yeah? And instead of the current mechanical outlook of don't fix it until it's broke, we have to develop the mindset that our health and well-being fulfill one of the purposes of life, which is the pursuit of happiness and wholeness. Look around you, you may see that the people went so much into loneliness and fear. The vaccinated are so much afraid of the unvaccinated of the vaccinated. So it's look at what's happening there and look, of course, inside of you. You may be very much surprised of what you will find. So there are obvious aspects in this and also some which are not so obvious, right? And contradictions and misunderstandings in the current medicine paradigm. But we have to face the idea that the idea that the human is the master of nature, which is part of this materialism science heritage, which creates so much confusion. How can a machine be the master, right? And not part of nature is falling apart and is being replaced with an idea which is much more true, that the humans are part of this purposive evolutionary movement of consciousness, and we better look at it until it's not too late. So again, we go back to the crisis which is happening, and you see danger, fear, anxiety, no doubt. And in quantum science, you know, one who lives by the quantum principles, a crisis presents opportunities. And how so? So now we can look into the beauty of the quantum science, which says that we experience fear, anxiety, and all that is in our psyche, and the objects in the psyche are quantum objects. So in contrast to Newtonian physics, which is governing macro matter, right, which is motion, is deterministic within fixed causal laws, the quantum physics is the physics of possibilities. So now is the time to really think and start applying that immediately. Because when you behave from conditioned homeostasis, which you see so much now happening, the psyche becomes Newtonian too, and is making you a prey of the built-in negativity of the brain. So it's up to you, it's up to us to stay with conditioned and Newtonian homeostasis of the psyche or opt for the quantum. But you have to, of course, like unless you are able to meditate, and see what other choices do you have in the present moment, you will not even know which are your choices. That's why the first, of course, meditation, going, understanding what is mental hygiene, seeing all these human base level condition and starting to work with that. It has to be done now, So the quantum science is saying you can say no to the conditioning and you can intend to choose new possibilities. It's not that you can, you have to now. Yeah. And your own higher consciousness hears you if your intention is synchronized with the purposive movement of consciousness. So if it is so synchronized, you get to manifest your wish. Science of manifestation, all that starts from that. Okay, so of course there are many factors about medical factors, which we will talk now and in the next ones. So it's similar to flu, but it's more contagious and life-threatening, all this coronavirus, right? It's a family of viruses, coronaviruses, 7 of which are known to cause disease in humans. And some coronaviruses that typically infect animals have evolved to also infect humans. So again, it's a lot of debates about that. But Amit was mentioning the vaccines. So I would also say that there is this myth a little bit that a vaccine will save us all. You have to check what is vaccine, what is not vaccine. That's all I want to say about this right now. And because there are both, by the way. So also there are both physical, vital, and mental, emotional aspects of our problem with viruses, and especially with coronavirus. And the physical aspect is, of course, to find easy preventive measures. What possibilities can you choose in order to keep yourself physically healthy at a time when the coronavirus spreads exponentially and all these variants that you're finding, whatever. So apart from the obvious hygiene stuff, right? Of course, isolation is the most effective hygiene choice initially and can give you a mental emotional fallout arising from the disruption of your regular normal functional routine, can keep you away from the job and and adding another big worry. So you have to think about that. And again, so I don't know if now or later we'll talk about how the viruses work, but in quantum physics we distinguish between living and non-living. And only the living can be conscious, can live and experience. And the non-living, they live in the unconscious unless a sentient being experiencing them. They have no manifest experience. And the virus is just a half-alive structure in some sense. So non-living, even if it's non-living, it's a protein covering a strand of potentially replicable nucleic acid molecule, RNA or DNA in potentiality. And it cannot replicate. However, it needs suitable proteins from host to help make its own proteins. And then it can reproduce, it can live, it can rapidly multiply in the host vulnerable organs that are not functioning properly, if it can defeat the organ's defense mechanisms. And that brings us to our overall defense mechanism, the immune system. And in this way, you are vulnerable against the coronavirus if your organs, the hardware and software combo, they are defective, and especially the immune system. And again, I'm not going to give you more medical details now if you want later, but the point is, again, that you have to understand that fear and anxiety can compromise immediately your immune system, as well as the lack of connections, the lack of love. Also, you saw the relation between all this with the immune system. So, of course, there are tons of preventive measures which we can use ourselves in order to increase our immunity. From the physical perspective, there are things which we can use. I've seen many people already treated in like 2 weeks, from an infection from coronavirus, of course. And it can be done definitely, but I tell you, what I see more threatening is the mental experience, all this fear and anxiety which is perpetuated nowadays, and we need to stop that. Kishana?
Yeah, I mean, in the continuation of what you just said, I was wondering, this is something that many of our viewers would be very keen to understand: prevention, because we still see a huge amount of humanity are still not infected, still not directly impacted in a way that even if they were infected, they did not come up with a symptom or any serious disease. So a large set would like to know some of these preventive things that can help them protect themselves and not only themselves as individuals, but the society in general. So we still have some time. Maybe if you can, just explain a few of these preventive techniques or medicines, whatever you think is right for our audience.
Yeah, we'll do, of course. We'll do now and even in the next ones, of course, because it's a lot to talk
Great.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, something.
So the thing is, again, I will start with the mental thing. Yeah. So again, pay attention to what programs are you feeding. We need from the physical and vital perspective. So apart from the obvious hygiene, there are these general methods to keep us physically healthy and even to further improve our immunity. I don't understand why people forgot about this, that we really have our own immunity, which can be improved. Yeah. So the general means to improve immunity include the following. So now I'm just telling some principles to discover, first of all, and explore positive feelings in the body in whatever way you know that. To balance yin and yang of the feelings of the chakras. We call them feelings in quantum science, but it's about experiencing the chakras. Yeah. So a good hatha yoga training would help, for example. Also, I mentioned having love in our life and manifesting it actively, practicing forgiveness, humility, compassion, hugging, giving, praying, or blessing others and even ourselves. So in this way, we have to make the positive emotion brain circuits, because as you know, the negative ones, they don't disappear. We need to really cultivate the positive ones. And especially now, when you see what's happening with all this negativity, which is again propagated over and over. Also, we need to learn to engage creativity and transform character, gain conviction, and even undertake creative explorations to discover and fulfill our dharma. Even so, we are not setting a break button now just because we have to see what's happening with the delta wave. Our lives are not set in a break. We don't pause our lives. And on the contrary, we need to fuel. To use all the fuel that we have to go through. Right? And it will start living a meaningful and purposive life, which is based on transformation. And of course, you have to see where you are. Everybody has to start from where the person is, from wherever point transformation can start, and it needs to start, So you see so much victimhood. Yeah, why waste your time so much in victimhood? So instead, you need to really be more active and practice yoga, meditation, pranayama, qigong, whatever and engage in practices for positive emotional brain circuits. Crystal work, sound therapy, singing, especially love songs, humming, chant mantras, all these rituals, engage with energy medicine, any of these good things. Yeah, so it's about choosing to use these times of crisis and isolation in order to deepen the communion with the higher archetypes, even divine attributes, whatever has the greatest value for you in your life. If you don't know about attributes, what is that quality without which you would not want to live this life, like love, goodness, and all that. Start studying about these things and amplify them, work with them, use the intent to amplify them in your being. Use this time for that, especially if you do it in a group, even online. There's this phenomenon of multiplication and non-locality, which is available. So be attentive to connect with the people, but connect with meaningful things, not with kind of superficial things, because you will see the effect of that and the impact in you. Yeah. Also pay attention to the vital aspects of nutrition, vegetarian food especially, but also to the non-locally vital interaction with nature. Yeah, flowers, trees, gardening. Yeah, and be aware, always do everything with inspiration and with the right intent. So that would be the beginning. Then, of course, besides the personal hygiene, also take care of the mental hygiene and learn how to work on the navel chakra, abdominal breathing. This will cool your fears, yeah, for example. Also fasting. And then the heart chakra, of course, to boost immunity. Then there are the principles related to the chakra system and quantum healing. From the software side, the dealing with the coronavirus has 3 aspects. So I just mentioned them now. Strengthening our defense, strengthening the organs, especially the host sites, especially the lungs, yeah, and strengthening the vitality of the whole vital body. So you can start with looking into these three aspects. But when you say immune system, it's about the heart and navel chakra. Yeah? And the heart, the crucial thymus gland, we distinguish between the body molecules and foreign molecules and kills off the foreign molecules. And so the immune system is the defense system, right? And then take care of the throat chakra organs with some of the things which I already mentioned. Then we have to check how to improve the vital software of the lungs. I mentioned pranayama. There are other things as well. Kishanu, it's up to the time what you consider. So
yeah, time is there. In fact, we still have 2-3 minutes.
No, 2 minutes. It's not so much, but it's just mentioning
right.
No, don't worry. We have time. Next time, this thing, I mean, we will, next week also will be in the coronavirus situation. Don't worry. But look at these main things first of all. So stop. I mean, you have to replace that fear and anxiety right now, and you have to choose the positive. That's the first thing, and so that you are on your side. Then God is also on your side.
Wonderful. That few minutes that we have, I'll quickly go back to Dr. Goswami and would like you to just give some pointers that mind over body. What she was practically saying is that if you keep your minds right and keep your other virtues intact and a lot of positive brain circuits, then this can effectively defend against the onset of coronavirus in an individual. From a scientific point of view, how do you look at it?
Well, this is the important thing to remember. Mind over body, which actually translates as consciousness over body. How do we do that? We have to recognize that we are not machine. That's the first thing. When we leave the body alone, we are acting like a machine. We have lost our role in the body's health. Body physiology, this is the fundamental mistake that we have made along with molecular biology, that assumption that there is no difference between living and non-living. The physiology of organs, organ functions, they are not determined by genes. They are epigenetic. In fact, more. The non-locality of how this epigenetic activation of the genes work makes it clear that they are not even material. Material things can never be non-local. Therefore, non-physical things. And of course, quantum physics insists that consciousness better be non-physical, otherwise we cannot understand or make sense of quantum physics. Everything in our world depends on quantum physics, so we cannot have that. So the new science. The new science says that physiology, yes, there is a part which is universal, we are born with it. But remember, we are born as a baby. We grow, huge amount of growth. Something like to age beyond 20. All that time we grow. Only after that, when the growth stops, then we can say that, okay, now the software is fixed, the functional software. You have to think of the organs as hardware plus software, physical hardware, non-physical software. And the software is where consciousness comes in. So if you grow up properly, this is the best way of preventing. If you grow up properly, we already have elements in our collective unconscious. Our ancestors did that for us, of positivity. But because our culture has become materialist, in previous cultures this was not a problem. Previous cultures did not have so much cancer. This is the reason they lived with an elevated physiology that we are capable of. And we can too. Some of us do develop this elevation in our developmental period. Ayurveda knew about this. Ayurveda already has talked about how we produce a dosha called pitta dosha, which keeps us away from this ability of higher physiology than people normally live. And this is the best key of prevention. Valentino was talking about love, how it keeps the immune system healthy. This higher physiology is guaranteed to take you to love and keep the immune system healthy. Why do we forget? Some people never develop it in their proper time. It is there, but just as ignore the signals. All this we have to take an entire episode to clarify to you. If we go too fast, we don't do much good. So I think let's close here, except to remind you once again that ultimately everybody knows what is the right answer for some of this. Keeping the immune system healthy and love is an essential ingredient of that. Now, how to best take care of it? This is the subject of the next episode. Vishanu?
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, both of you. And of course, in the next episode, we'll learn about more of these things and something that our users, our audience can very easily relate to and use them right away in their experience. Just imagine, I was thinking while you were talking that we take medicines, we take preventive actions, and we do all sorts of things. And as Valentina pointed out, the main thinking is don't fix it unless it's broken. Once we get out of that philosophy, you see what amazing types of therapy that can help us. Love, for instance. Just imagine that love, which we consider as to be something very different, can, and not only can, it is one of the most important aspects of healing, of prevention, of increasing the power of the immunity system. So once we learn more about it, we'll find, wow, there's so many things which are very easy. In fact, most of the things that are very critical to our life are very easy. Think about air, water. So we'll know more about them in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching and have a great weekend.